Hey everybody, we are back at it again at the drop. Welcome back. You made it here again. We are dropping truth and bringing life. That is what we do here at the drop. And I am so excited because we have a special guest with us today. My husband is back again. Say what's up.
Heyo, what's up?
Heyo. Well, it is the month of February. And that's why we're here to also continue talking about relationships and marriage and all of that. But anyway, so we want to chat today about marriage and also about relationships and kind of like what I said earlier, whether you're married or not. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, it's really good for just even relationships, okay? But we do want to talk from the perspective of being married, but also it does apply to just like friendships and relationships and family and all of that. So today, what are we talking about?
Communication. What are you doing?
I'm singing because it is such an important topic, but it's also very challenging, I think, in marriages especially, because you hopefully in a marriage, you are exchanging at a deeper level in life than maybe just a friend or a coworker, things like that. So communication takes a lot of work. And it is, I think, one of the biggest keys to making any relationship work well and function in a healthy way. So why do you think communication is so important in marriage and relationships?
I think just in general, I think it's really, number one, it's very difficult to do it well because based on how people have grown up, the environments that they've been in, that's how you learn to communicate, is by who you're around.
Right.
Like whether it's your parents when you're little, your group of friends, your job. And in certain situations, it's difficult to communicate clearly because in a job setting, for instance, some people are scared to be straightforward. They don't want to be seen as pushy or disrespectful. Or, some people never really say what they mean because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And, it gets tough for those reasons. But I think when you can communicate clearly, I think everyone's goal is to be understood as like a human being. That's like a core goal. And a lot of times people are misunderstood because they don't say what they really want, or they don't communicate. They don't know how to communicate clearly. A lot of times people don't process their feelings well. And they might say something, or it might be like an event triggered a feeling, but they don't know why they're upset, but they're just upset. And it's really hard to get to the root issue and communicate that well or calmly in a way that someone else can understand, empathize, and kind of deal with whatever you're trying to deal with. So, I mean, it's important because once you understand somebody, you can relate to them and kind of respond accordingly. But if you never really understand where they're coming from or why they're upset or why they're feeling a certain way, then you can't really adequately address it ever, and it just kind of gets lost in translation, and it could lead to like more miscommunications, feelings,
so many things,
resentment, feeling like this person doesn't care about how I feel, or maybe they don't even know how you really feel, but you think that they don't. Yeah,
it can take you down like a bad rabbit hole really fast, for sure. And I think yes, you nailed a lot of really important things, and I think that one thing that I've always been taught by my dad is that communication permits progress. And I think that's always just stuck with me so well because it's, number one, it's super true. Like, if you're not communicating with someone, and then everything kind of halts, like you're not connecting, you're not engaging, you're not on the same page, you don't know what the person's thinking or not thinking. And just all of these things, it just kind of like, it can actually really begin to deteriorate a relationship if there's not good communication.
Yeah, and some people do it without even noticing. Like I know, like before, people, like I'll just say, you would want to go do something or go eat somewhere. But you wouldn't say, hey, I would like to eat Mexican tonight, or I would like to go get pizza. You would be indirectly asking and saying, hey, do you want to get pizza tonight? And then I'm thinking, I'm being asked a question.
He's like, not really.
No, not really. Can we go somewhere else? And then you'd feel like, well, you never go where I want to go.
Right.
And that was a thing for a minute. And it was like, we never eat where I want.
It's true. No, it's very
like,
true.
Well, you don't say. You're not telling me that I would like to eat this food today.
Yeah. And it is really true that number one, that yes, I used to do that, and I feel like I'm better at that now, because you kind of pointed it out to me, you know, and it's partly my personality. I'm kind of like, I kind of want this, but I want to consider everyone else in the room, you know, and I'm okay if we don't, but let me just throw it out there, and if no one bites, then I'll move on, you know. Yeah. But it is important to be clear and to be direct and to say what you want or say what you feel. Obviously, like in an open way, you know, and in like a coming from a good place, not like in a like self-driven, I don't care what anybody else wants around me way.
Right. Well, you know the little saying that you hear as a little kid, right? You say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Then don't say it mean. That's very true. That's very true. Yeah. So I think communication is important for, like you said, for an understanding, to bring progress to the relationship. And I think also just clarifying things, you know, between two people. When you get any two people together in a marriage, especially, but even in like friendships and stuff, like those two people are different. You know, it's just no two people are exactly the same, no matter how much you have in common. So there eventually will pop up like these differences, or, well, I see it this way. I don't understand how you can see it that way. And so communication is needed to bring clarity.
Yeah, and especially in marriage, typically, you marry someone that's different than you, like polar opposite most of the time, because opposites attract. So you have some qualities that I don't have that made you attractive to me, etc. And not only that,
many good qualities.
Not only that, the two people are different, but then the two backgrounds of how you do things, how you grew up, what your view on family or life is. Yeah. And so now you're melding these two different upbringings, these two different personalities and qualities, characteristics, and you're trying to hopefully create something new. Yeah. But I think at the beginning, and this was hard for us, it was like, well, I always did it this way, and this is the right way. Look, no, I always did it this way, and this is the right way. Remember when we did the coffee?
Oh, yes. That was our first big fight after we got married. It was about coffee.
And it's so dumb because I don't even drink coffee anymore.
It was so funny. It was like, I think it all started with we had a coffee maker.
Someone gave us one with an alarm, so I programmed the alarm to make it.
Yes, you programmed the alarm to make it, and I don't. What was this fight even about? I mean, I distinctly remember fighting, and I remember I went and bought myself my own mini coffee maker.
So I made it like the directions say, just kind of like. You know, IHOP, Waffle House coffee, where it's not super thick and strong.
Not strong.
It's just like regular coffee.
Like water coffee.
Yeah, like you get at the diner, right? And so you were like, no, this is not, I can't have coffee like this. And I was like, you have it all the time when we go like to Waffle House and you don't complain to them. But so it was this big blow up.
Yeah. No. He wasn't making it the way I liked it. And you're not a big coffee drinker, and like we just got into this big thing because it was just two different ways of doing it.
So she pulled out this tiny little joke coffee maker.
Yeah, that I had from college.
I'm gonna make my own coffee. You do it however you want. I'm gonna
make my own coffee. And I did. And at the time, it solved the problem, right? At the time, it solved the problem. But yeah, it's funny because you have these differences, and that is why communication is so important. And really, if we really want to backpedal back down memory lane, what my real issue was about the coffee, it wasn't even like really technically about like how he was technically making the coffee. It's that I felt that he wasn't considering how I like the coffee.
Oh, this is deep. This is like marriage counseling level. Because it's true. It's never about the thing.
Right.
It's about how you feel about the thing.
And at the time, I didn't communicate that at all. I didn't tell him. Now, since we've been married for so long, I can tell him, and there's been growth in our communication and our relationship. I can tell him, look, it's not about the coffee. It's about the fact that I like it a certain way, and if you're doing it for me, it would make me feel really special and loved if you made it the way I like it. And it's like, boom, okay, now I get it. It's not her just being difficult. There's something deeper here. And you're right. There's always something deeper than like what the issue is, you know, or what the problem is.
For sure, because humans are complex, and something happens and it triggers an emotion. And a lot of times, one of the biggest things that we learn in counseling, and that it's easy to hear but very difficult to do and put in practice, is how to communicate what you're feeling and why.
And why, yeah.
And actually make it about yourself and what you are feeling. So when this happened, I felt
this way.
This.
Yeah.
Instead of, you always do this.
You made me feel this.
I feel that you don't care.
Yeah.
That's not a real actual feeling, but that's how people talk. And so then you get in this loop of like, well, that's not what I feel.
Yeah, now you're just like, we're just playing defense and
you feel that I don't
and,
care? Well, that's not true, because I do care. So now what? And
that's
then
so good. I'm really glad you
never get to like processing, okay, why am I feeling this way? And, you know, because people live in the moment. It's easy to be like, oh, you did that? I'm upset. React.
Right. Oh,
but when you can take a second and realize, man, that made me upset. Why? Okay. And when you can bring it up in not a fight, then then you can feel, you have the opportunity to be understood. But if you just react and attack, then that person's going to get defensive and be caught totally off guard, because chances are, unless they're a horrible human being, they didn't really do that on purpose with the intention of hurting you. They did something that maybe got under your skin, or you know,
you're in with somebody, you know,
or they were having a bad day and said something like,
or something set him off
short, or
yeah, that's really good, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that's one of the biggest, you know, things we've learned for our marriage, and it was in marriage counseling, was to you know, communicate clearly how you feel and why. And then what that counselor told us, which I thought was so good, the other person that hears that needs to emotionally identify and connect with that. And it can't just be like this, oh, well, I'm sorry you felt that way. That's not taking any responsibility. He told us, he said, you know, well, when you hear that, how does that make you feel? Like, do you feel sad? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel disappointed in yourself that this person is telling you that? Then it's okay to tell that person. It's okay to say, I feel really bad that what I did caused you to feel that way. And then he said, ask for forgiveness. And that has been huge. He was saying, like, take I'm sorry out of your vocabulary. That's like, I'm sorry. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. And what do you know, and I always felt that way. Like, what am I supposed to say that? Like, cool, I'm glad you're sorry. I feel the same, you know? But when you say, will you please forgive me for blank, that's super specific, and that opens a door to healing, instead of just like this, oh, well, sorry you felt that way, not my problem. It's kind of like what that's saying. But when you say, will you please forgive me, that's showing the other person that, like, you're taking responsibility for their heart, for what they're going through. And that all starts with being able to communicate, like you were saying. Yeah,
and I think the key to meaningful communication is you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
and
man.
It's difficult for a lot of people, because being vulnerable means you have the opportunity to get hurt again.
Yeah.
And that's scary for a lot of people. And a lot of people that have been hurt or have dealt with hurtful things, they close themselves off to that kind of thing, because they say, I was hurt in the past. I don't want this to happen again. I remember what that was like. And so they'll be passive aggressive with how they communicate and not really say, or they'll be really short. And that won't lead to like a resolution of the deep hurt that you feel, or, you know, whatever you're feeling, because you're not allowing access to that part of you. Right. So as really much, all the little communication keys, you can try all of them if you want, but if you're not vulnerable, that will never get resolved, because you're cutting that part of yourself off from whoever you're dealing with. Really and it's scary, but that's how true resolution and forgiveness and progress,
healing needed
can happen. And that's
very true.
You know, funny anecdote, when we've had discussions in the past, and I could tell that you were being guarded.
I already know what you're going to say.
I could tell you were being guarded or standoffish, and I said,
can I talk to the real?
I need to talk to Karina, not her representative, not the doorman, okay? because we need to
So
resolve this
it's
for real.
So good and so accurate. Whenever you have to say that to me, it is so accurate. It's really, really good. Being vulnerable is something that in relationships, and more importantly, in marriages, it has to be a part of your relationship. Well, it doesn't have to be, but it should, and it really does bring you.
Well, if you want it to be a thriving relationship,
it brings you. That's what I was
needs
gonna say. It brings you to a deeper place. It brings you to a more intimate place, and like you said, it's not always easy. And I think that we do have this like false concept of walls sometimes that we put up because we've been hurt or we feel away or whatever's the reason. And it doesn't mean that those hurts aren't real or that your pain is not real. But what happens is, I think, especially in a marriage, is when we put up walls, which was me. I put up, like, I would just build those walls, like just nice big tall walls, really nice thick walls. I would paint my walls. I would decorate my walls. And I was saying, these walls are my walls. And I love my walls. And it's really this false sense of safety. Mm-hmm. It's this false sense of security. And in a relationship, it's one of the most detrimental things that we can do, because really what it does is it stifles you as a human in that relationship, and it also stifles the relationship.
Well, here's what it does. If you need like a visual, so you put yourself in your walls and you think, now I'm safe.
Right.
No one can hurt me here.
Right.
But the truth is, no one can love you there either, because no one can get to you.
No one can love you there, and also you can't go anywhere. You can't go beyond those walls. So the walls that we put up in our relationships actually hurt us more than anybody else, because your walls are your limits. Like, that's it. That's where you end in that relationship. And so for a marriage, it's very easy to put up walls because I think in that type of relationship, you're like, I'm with this person for life and I don't like this right now. And so I just want to be safe. But what really needs to happen is that safe, vulnerable talk. Mm-hmm. And it is important, just as important as talking, listening is. And I think that when you're dealing with two people, that is a big element of creating a safe feeling. And if you don't feel safe in your marriage to talk about how you feel emotionally, then that needs to be the very first conversation.
Yeah, and these conversations have to happen not in the middle of an argument.
No, yeah, that doesn't go anywhere.
You have to come to an understanding and say, look, whatever that might look like, but when I'm being vulnerable, you cannot use what I tell you against me in an argument, because that's me stepping out into an unknown space. Right. And opening parts of myself really to you, and you cannot weaponize that against me, or I'll never do it again.
Right. No, of course. And so I think that's really big.
You have to listen and be, you might not like what you're hearing all of the time, but if someone's, being vulnerable and open, you have to respect it and be like, okay, I may not agree, but I can understand what you're trying to tell me, and I can try to put myself in your shoes and see how that might feel or what you're dealing with, and then you can come to some understanding. Yeah, really and it's not one person just bullying the whole thing, or using you told me that, next time we fight I'm gonna pull this out of my back pocket. And, remember this? And
no, that's something that to be honest, I think we've learned from experience. And we've learned that in order to create a good, safe, healthy place for us to both be really open about what we need or what hurt us or what we're going through or whatever it might be, that, like you said, whether we agree or whether we fully get it, like, we have to have an open mind to understanding each other, because that is, like we talked about at the beginning, that is the biggest goal. One of the biggest goals of communication is to get understanding. It's not agreement. Agreeing is great. Mm-hmm. And you want to be in agreement with things, but you're not always going to agree. And if you think in communication and relationships that the goal is agreement, you're in for a tough ride with life. The goal is understanding, and the goal is if needed and when needed, is to come together to create a compromise, you know, that works well for both, that takes care of both each other's needs and all of that stuff. So communication, talking as much as listening is really key to making sure that works well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for listening, a big thing is empathy. You know, a lot of times people get stuck on their side of the coin or the argument.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you take a moment to put yourself, I mean, this is easy for me, but some people have a more difficult time of putting themselves in somebody else's shoes. And they just think of like, how does it affect me?
Yeah,
but
right.
when you think of like, okay, based
You
on
are
what
good
this
at that.
person has gone through or where they're at or what they're telling me, how do they feel?
Yeah.
And how would I feel if that happened to me?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of build a common ground, a bridge, and realize, oh, okay, I could see where you're coming from. I may not have experienced that in the same way, or that might not be my experience, but I can see where you're coming from, and I can see the humanity in you sharing that with me, and empathize with you, and then create a solution or common ground, or just even be there for you and support you. But if I'm always worried about how it makes me feel, what happens to me, oh, well, that doesn't matter to me, or oh, that doesn't affect me, so I really don't care, then you can't really form that connection, even with like friendships and people in general, or you know, people that you don't even come in contact with that often, and you just think, oh well, out of sight, out of mind, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about entering into like a marriage relationship, is that, you know, there's a lot of growth in understanding that person and learning to love that person with their background, with all their, you know, places that they shine and places that they don't shine. It's a part of the beauty of that relationship, is to grow in that. Communication is very key in any relationships, and especially in your marriage. And so some of the takeaways that I think we can take from today is, number one, it's okay to be open. You need to be open. And it's also really important, like you were saying, is to be vulnerable. And then, you know, communication brings progress. And I think both partners in the relationship have to make sure they're doing their part to create a safe place. I think that's one of the biggest things we've learned is to do what we need to do for each other to make sure that we feel safe, to really say what we feel. And then what was that you shared, just a recap of what we learned from our counseling?
Oh, you need to say what you're feeling and why. And
what you're feeling and why, like what caused it.
And make it about yourself. Like when this happened, I felt this, disappointed, sad, whatever. And then give the other person an opportunity to respond with an emotional response.
And to ask for forgiveness.
You did ask for forgiveness.
Whenever it's needed, So we hope those couple of tips can just help you guys this week in your relationships and your marriages. And we'll be back next week with another fun topic to share with you guys. So have an awesome rest of your week, and we'll see you guys next week here at The Drop.
See ya.